G'day, I'm Paul. So when you got a winning formula like the Toyota HiLux, why not turn it into a big old SUV? That's kind of what they've done here. This is the Toyota Fortuner. It is the 7-seat version of the Toyota HiLux, so it shares the same platform with it. This right here is the top specification Toyota Fortuner Crusade. It's priced at a little over $61,000. If this is a little bit too much, the entire range starts at just under $50,000. There's a couple of options in there. This competes with things like the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, the Ford Everest, and the Isuzu MU-X. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. If you want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes up on the screen there, or if you're on YouTube, just scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe, bell icon, please do those two things so you can find out every single time we drive a big SUV. Righto, let's start with exterior. So you've got 8 exterior colours to choose from, and all but white is an additional $600. The Fortuner's been out for a little bit of time now, but they've just done a facelift, and that was in line with the facelift of the HiLux. So you can see a few different changes here. You've got a different grille, you've also got a different bottom section, different fog lights as well. And just in terms of the design itself, I think it still looks pretty impressive. This seems to have grown, following a trend with some cars where the logos are just becoming exponentially bigger, which I think is a little bit funny. But anyway, and you can kind of tell this has off-road intentions because you've got quite a decent approach angle there, and I'll explain what that means later on, but it makes it better for off-road driving. They've kind of given it a bit more of a rugged and tougher looking exterior, and that follows on here with the headlights. They've become nice and slim now. This is a full LED headlight. Let's whip around to the wheels. Okay, so you have 18-inch alloy wheels. I quite like the design. It's like a bit of a shadow chrome look. It kind of signals the intentions of the car. This is more a highway terrain tyre, but you can get all-terrain tyres on lower Fortuner models. That'll give you a little bit more latitude when you're driving off-road, whereas this will be quieter when you're on the highway and will also be better for on-road performance as well. So keep that in mind. A little bit of plastic cladding there on the wheel arches, so you know what this is all about. Whip around the side of the car, you've got an indicator built into that wing mirror. You get side steps here. You get these roof rails as well. I quite like the design. It's not like a chrome or anything sort of too showy. It just sort of sits nicely there. Privacy glass as well, and then come around to the back. More LED, so you've got LED taillights here. Do you reckon this kind of looks like the BMW X5? You know how the X5 has that thin strip and then another thin strip beneath it? Let me know what you think. I can see where they got their inspiration from. Crusade badge down there for the top spec model, and then Fortuner written along the top there. And then you have the boot opener hidden away nicely, and then this spoiler that sits up the top as well. Now, let me know what you think in the comments section below. This has a lot of competitors in this segment, but doesn't really sell all that well. You don't see many of them out on the road. So let me know what you think of that. Would you buy this over some of its competitors? Or do you think that Toyota probably needs to fine tune this a little bit more? Let me know what you think. We're inside the Fortuner. Let's start with the key. Here it is here. So you have lock, unlock, boot, a panic button, the Toyota symbol, a little bit of chrome garnish around the edge, and then on the back you have a little outline and it says Fortuner as well. This is a proximity sensing key, so there's a button on the door, you push that, it unlocks and locks the car. Then once you're inside the cabin, you have a push button start. Right, let's talk about styling. Yeah, this is kind of typical Toyota. It just feels robust but slightly dated. And by that, I mean, look at this traditional layout here. You've got the infotainment system there, climate controls, vents. It's sort of nothing too adventurous, including in terms of the styling. It's all fairly basic looking. But in terms of material selection, feels nice and soft up there, a little scratchy there, but all of these surfaces are padded. Kind of gives you the impression that it is a little bit more premium, especially with that stitching there. And given this is the top spec model, you kind of need it to feel like you've spent a little bit of money in here. How soft are all of these touch points? See, that one there is nice. That one there is really nice as well. So we have a tool that tests these out. We have tested the main surfaces in this car. If you want to see how this compares to other cars that we've tested, just scroll down and use the link in the description below. Now, what about build quality? So being a Toyota, it's actually all pretty good. All of this stuff feels nicely put together, and I think if you did a longer trip in this car and were genuinely wanting to do something like a drive or a trip around Australia, this would probably be a pretty sensible choice. Moving on to infotainment, you get an 8-inch infotainment system with a color touchscreen. If you do want to see a detailed review of this, click up here. We've recorded one previously. Today I'll just give you a brief overview so you can get the basics. So 8-inch screen, color touchscreen. You also get smartphone mirroring in the form of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Both of those require a cable. I'll show you what Android Auto looks like to start with. Here it is here, full screen integration. And then if we click here, it's actually not too bad. It's nice and quick. Let's see what Apple CarPlay looks like. Here it is here, full screen integration. Nice and quick as well. I'll let you in on a little secret. Toyota's inbuilt voice recognition system isn't very good, but when you do have a smartphone paired, you can use this to send commands through to your smartphone, so it's a whole lot more accurate. And hey, by the way, if you do want to see a comparison between Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, if you're looking for your next phone, we're just interested to see how the technology differs, click up here to watch a video we shot earlier. But what about the rest of the infotainment system? We'll jump over to audio. You get AM, FM, DAB plus digital radio, along with an 11-speaker JBL branded sound system, along with all the JBL insignia around the place. Let's talk about safety technology. So you have autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian detection. You've got an auto-dimming rear vision mirror. You don't get blind spot monitoring, which is really kind of strange. You do get a lane keeping assistant, but keep in mind that it isn't a great system because you don't have EPAS, which is electrically assisted steering rack. So instead of it pulling you back into the lane, it pulses the brakes and it can be quite jarring and take you off guard at times. So keep that in mind. And you also have a radar cruise control as well. On the parking front, you have front and rear parking sensors and a reverse view camera. Let's have a look at the quality of that. I'm keen to see what that's like. Quality's okay. It's not amazing, and then you have guidelines there for the steering as well, plus a centerline marker if you do have a tow bar installed. So before we move on to practicality, I wanted to ask you guys a question. What are your thoughts on wood grain? So you may not have noticed, but in between these leather sections, there is wood grain there, and there's like a wood grain hue down here. I don't think it's real wood, but do you think wood grain needs to die? I'm still a bit of a fan of it, but I'm really keen to get your feedback. So I've started a virtual poll. Let me know in the comments section below. Is wood grain here to stay, or should we stick it on the bonfire and let it die peacefully? Right, so moving on to practicality, and we'll start with connectivity. I don't know why they do this, but there is one USB port up here, and it's this one here. The second you have your phone plugged into that for smartphone mirroring, you have nowhere else really to charge your things unless you use a adapter for the 12-volt outlet. So a little bit disappointing there. They haven't really forward thought about that. But in terms of storage, where are you going to put your phone when it's not plugged in? Well, you've got room there in the cup holders, and there's also a little tray up the front there, but no wireless phone charging. And then in terms of coffee cup storage, your coffee cup sits up the front there, but it's quite deep, so it'll disappear pretty quickly and you might lose the lid. There are teeth there to keep things secure, so when you do put a bottle in, it sits in really nicely. There isn't a great deal of storage up the front here though when you look at that, because if you do have a bottle in there, it's hard to access your phone storage, so it would be nice to see just a little bit more storage. But in terms of door storage, you can fit a bottle in there easily, plus other odds and ends. Also keep in mind, just like the HiLux, you have a little bottle holder in front of your air vents if you want to keep a drink cool or keep it hot. And you also have a center console here. It's reasonably sized. You can see how deep it is there with the bottle. We have two glove boxes over here. Deep one down the bottom there that'll fit the bottle, and then another one up the top here that is air conditioned as well, that easily fits your bottle. And finally, you have a sunglasses holder up the top. Okay, comfort, what's it like? You have single zone automatic climate control with individual controls for the rear air vents. Seat heating for the first row. In terms of seat adjustment, it is electric for the driver and front passenger. The seats themselves are actually really nice and comfortable. So if you are doing a long drive, this is going to be a good place to be seated. The steering wheel sits nicely in the hands as well, and all of these controls are easy to reach. I quite like the seat design. It's sort of basic, but looks premium with all the stitching and stuff, and it looks like it's rugged and easy to keep clean as well, which I think is important. Okay, second row time. This is where the kids are going to be seated, or perhaps the adults if you're ferrying people around. What's it like back here? Let's start with room. Knee room is actually pretty reasonable. I've got this seat quite far back, but I've got plenty of knee room there. Toe room isn't great. My toes are sort of wedged under the seat there, and headroom is okay. Not amazing though. If you're taller, you're probably going to be touching on the roof there. terms of other creature comforts, you have mat pockets. I like these little hooks. They say they have maximum 4 kilos, so this is for your shopping and stuff like that. In fact, you guys told me that on, which video was it? One of the recent ones we did. I asked you, what do you put there? And everyone had everything from shopping to handbags, so this is obviously a useful thing to have. You have one 12-volt outlet here, but this is pretty handy. You have a 220 volt outlet down the bottom that can service up to 100 watts of power, which is good. Center armrest, you have 2 cup holders in there. Fits the bottle in nice and easy. Then you can also put the bottle inside the door if you want to. In terms of seat adjustment, you can actually move these seats forwards and backwards to give the third row a little bit more room. And as I mentioned before, you have blower controls here with air vents located in the roof. It is worth pointing out though that your middle passenger has to construct their own seatbelt, and then that means you've got this thing dangling across the center of the cabin if you do have a center passenger, which is a little bit inconvenient. And finally, you have ISOFIX points on the 2 outboard seats. Okay, so it's a 7-seater. How do you get access to the third row? It's not all that easy, and I'll explain why. So this part's okay. You can actually tumble this entirely out of the way. There's a little grip handle there if you've got little ones that need to climb into the back, but there's no easy way to drop the seats. So you've got to come around here, open the boot, wait for the boot to open, and you can see this. I haven't really seen this before. They pack the seats up against the wall, so you have to manually unclip that, bring the seat down into its position, and then pull this up. I've got to bring this one down as well, just to show you what that looks like. There we go, they're both done. Now I'm going to climb in. Alrighty, here we go. It's actually surprisingly easy to climb in. So we're in now. Headroom is pretty much non-existent. My head is well and truly wedged up against there. Let's see how we go with leg room. I'll bring that up as well. Look, it's okay, it's not amazing. Remember, this row can slide forward, so if you get your second row passenger to move it forward, you can actually fit an adult here, because I have loads of toe room there. It's just the knee room's not amazing, and the headroom's not great either. So this is probably only a kid's zone, and you'd expect that given this is based on a HiLux. You do have storage off to the side though, except there's no USB ports here or any type of charging, which is a little bit disappointing. Okay, what about cargo space? Normally with these 7-seat SUVs that are based off utes, you don't have a great deal of boot room. This is kind of the same. You've got around 200 litres of cargo capacity here. Off to the side, you have a 12-volt outlet. Let's see if it actually fits our bags. That one kind of fits in sideways. I'm curious to see if that fits. There you go, that actually fits. That's not really that bad. Quite like that. Okay, now, if you do want to expand the space a little bit, you've got to offload your third row. It's all pretty straightforward. That all comes out of the way, then you've got to clip it into position up here. Same story over here. Goodbye. And then it goes up there. Okay, so this expands the space to a little over 700 litres, but as you can see, it's not really a very versatile space. You've got these hooks in the way, and then these seats just take up so much room. Let's see how it goes with our bags in there. So you can see when you put the bags in, there's actually not that much room to do much more sideways. You can expand the space a little bit more though by dropping the second row. Let me show you what that looks like. You've got to do that from around the sides. So drop that side out of the way. And then we drop this, and that expands the space to a little over 1,000 litres. But keep in mind, it's not flat. You've got this little waterfall section down here. Okay, let's talk engine. The Fortuner shares a powertrain with the HiLux, which means the most recent HiLux update has now translated, not surprisingly, over to the Fortuner as well. So that means a 2.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel engine makes 150 kilowatts of power and 500 newton meters of torque. So that was the increase in the torque. That's really where you're going to feel it. And when you're behind the wheel, 6-speed automatic transmission works pretty well, and you can really feel the urgency about mid-range. That's where you really notice all the changes that Toyota has made. And it's not just a tune, a fair bit has gone into actually making this a more eager engine and more pleasing to drive. Okay, let's talk fuel economy. Toyota claims a combined average of 7.6 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres. Let's see what we're achieving. We're on 9.4, so it is a little higher than what Toyota claims, but It's about right when you consider that we've been doing mainly city driving and a little bit of off-road driving as well, with a bit of highway thrown in, but predominantly city driving. Now, what about drive modes? So typical Toyota fashion, you've got 3 drive modes to choose from. Hit the Eco button and nothing really happens. They just dull the throttle response and just make it almost entirely lifeless. Normal is just your standard driving mode, and then Sport does pretty much the opposite of Eco. The second you hit the throttle, it sharpens that throttle response. It's not like you're getting any extra power. All it does is adjust the throttle map so that when you're at 50% throttle, it tells the car that you're at 80% instead. So it makes it feel like it's quicker, despite nothing actually really changing with the power output of the engine. You can also manually shift gears. You've got paddle shifters here on the steering wheel, and then also the ability to rifle through gears over here. You also have a sport mode for the gearbox too. We don't have a 0 to 100 time for the Fortuner, but we've recorded it anyway. Let's see how it goes against the stopwatch. Now let's talk about ride. Okay, so this bit hasn't really improved. They didn't touch the ride and they really needed to. HiLux has improved over the generations. It's gone from being a really firm dual cab ute to being pleasant but not class leading. This, on the other hand, has stayed really firm. So we're driving along a country road here. The second I move off the main surface and hit any of these corrugations, you can just really feel everything through the cabin, and most of it's felt at the rear. They haven't really tuned it enough to make it comfortable, so it really does feel quite harsh in comparison to something like an Everest or a Pajero Sport. One other thing I want to point out as well, the Everest is a full-time four-wheel drive. The Pajero Sport can be driven as a full-time four-wheel drive as well. This, on the other hand, is virtually a carryover from HiLux, so you drive it in two-wheel drive most of the time, and you can only use high-range four-wheel drive when you're on sealed surfaces. So it's a little bit of a compromise there in terms of that added traction that you get with the Everest. And I think this is one of the things that makes me feel like Toyota really hasn't put a great deal of effort into this vehicle. I think it really needs a little bit more work to keep up with the rest of the competitors in the segment. Okay, let's put it into sport mode. Let's see what it's like in terms of handling. We've got a corner here. But it's okay, but not amazing. There's a fair bit of body roll there, and the steering as well. You would have noticed earlier I didn't mention that the sport mode adjusts steering feel because it's a hydraulically assisted steering rack. It has virtually no feel at all, and because it's not an EPAS system, there's no way to configure it to have extra weight when you go through the sport mode. And this sort of lends to that theory of mine that I just don't feel they've put all that much effort into the Fortuner. The rest of the competitors in this segment use an EPAS system, and this just misses out on it. Now, what about road noise? So it's not too bad. I don't get a great deal of road noise from the tyres, but the engine is fairly noisy, especially when you get up at it. It starts making a fair bit of a racket. When it's idling at low speed as well, you can really feel and hear it translating through to the cabin. So it doesn't really feel all that refined. But if you are doing a long distance drive, it eventually levels out to the point where you don't notice it too much. And the fact that you're not getting a great deal of noise from the tyres helps improve things a little bit when the engine isn't revving. In terms of visibility, yes, it is a big SUV, but it doesn't feel all that big behind the wheel. I can clearly see down the bonnet there. Visibility out the rear is okay when the third row is folded up. The headrests in the second row are quite big, so they block a little bit of the vision, but it's not too bad. And then in terms of the wing mirrors, they're big enough there to clearly see down the side of the car. It is a bit disappointing though that you don't get blind spot monitoring. When it comes to U-turns, a turning circle of 11.6 meters is actually not too bad. Okay, time for some light off-roading. Let's quickly run through the four-wheel drive specs we have here. So 29-degree approach angle, that's the angle of the face you can approach before you hit anything, and a 25-degree departure angle, which is the same but in reverse. There's 216 millimeters of ground clearance and 700 millimeters of weighting depth. Now, if none of that means anything to you, you can click up here to watch our four-wheel drive controls explained video, where I run through that and give you a couple of demos. Now, this is also, as I mentioned, a two-wheel drive for most of the time. You can switch it over into four-wheel drive high range and also four-wheel drive low range, which we're just about to do because this is an unsealed surface, which means there is enough flexibility there. We're not going to bind up any gears. There's also a hill descent control, which we'll test out in just a second. So there's that little indicator saying full drive is active. We'll see how we go up here. There is a rear differential lock as well, but you can only use that when you're in low range. Pressing it now doesn't actually do anything. So let's see how we go up Log Mountain. Oh, this is effortless. Yeah, the suspension is pretty firm, so you are getting thrown around a fair bit. But it's walking up here without any dramas at all. That is really impressive. Okay, so let's try our descent, because I have a feeling we're going to touch a couple of things here. There's been some rocks that have moved around recently, so it's become a little more treacherous. Yeah, immediately I'm noticing there, this brake pedal is so sensitive. I noticed that, oh, there it is, a little crunch. I noticed that with the Prado as well, that when you're doing descents like this, every time you hit a rock or you're coming down, the brake pedal is so sensitive that you're just constantly bucking and moving around. Can get a little bit frustrating. The wheel in the air. It's actually not too bad. Yeah, we did touch down at the start there, but the rest of this is okay. Let's try out this hill descent control. That is on now. Foot is off the brake. Let's see how it goes. Whoa, that is running away. Okay. It's settled itself down a little bit there, but for that start part, it just ran away from us. So, yeah, okay. Look, it coped with that perfectly fine. Just like the HiLux, the off-road systems in these are so good that you can really just go anywhere. It's not idiot-proof, though. You've still got to set a lot of this up manually yourself, so it is worth doing a bit of training if you are going to do any more serious off-road driving, and make sure you check out the video I mentioned before. Okay, Toyota Fortuner, what do we reckon? I don't know, a little bit underwhelmed with it, and I was underwhelmed when it first launched because it was just too firm and just felt like an off-road vehicle that was an SUV as opposed to an SUV that was an off-road vehicle. They're two very separate things, and you want an SUV for the family, you want it to feel nice and premium inside. This kind of doesn't fit that bill. It feels like a off-road version of the HiLux in an SUV form as opposed to a nice SUV. So anyway, the people who are going to buy this were always going to buy it regardless of what we thought. And on that token, you do have a pretty punchy engine. It'll go anywhere just like the HiLux does, but I think it's just let down in small parts around the cabin, such as those third row seats that flip up the sides. It just feels like Toyota hasn't put a great deal of effort into this product. And I think you're better off buying something like an Everest or a Pajero Sport, or even just waiting until the new MU-X arrives, because that is just around the corner. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. Did you buy one of these? Do I just have no idea? Am I missing something? Let me know in the comments section below. Did you buy something else instead after test driving this? I'm really keen to find out. If you found this video useful, I would love it if you could share it with your friends. Also hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon as well. But until next time, take it easy.